Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Oxnard City Council Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting for October 24th. Time is 8:30. Madam Clerk, do you have some comments that you'd like to read, please?
Thank you, Chair Perello. The public may view the meeting from home on Spectrum Channel 10, Frontier Channel 35, or at youtube.com/Oxnard News. Video recordings of the meeting are typically available online following the meeting at the city's website. The public may participate in the meeting in the following ways. Attend the meeting in person at 305 West 3rd Street and submit a speaker card to the city clerk. 2. Submit a request to speak remotely by no later than 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting by using the form available at www.oxnard.org/citymeetings. 3. Submit an email to cityclerk@oxnard.org or contact the city clerk's office at 805-385-7803 no later than 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting. To provide public comment during the meeting, please dial 888-475-4499 and enter the meeting ID and passcode located on the agenda. Public comments will be taken following the announcement of the item. Detailed participation instructions can be found at www.oxnard.org/citymeetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assistant City Clerk. With that, we'll have the roll call, information about posting the agenda, and a flag salute and a moment of silence for someone that was killed today.
Member Valenzuela Zavala.
Present.
Member Zaragoza.
Here.
Chair Perello.
Here.
The agenda for the meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on October 17, 2023.
Committee member Valenzuela will lead the Pledge of Allegiance, and there was a horrendous accident in Los Angeles today. Apparently some 50-some-year-old gentleman riding a bicycle in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, was hit, and the person didn't stop and drugged this person 3/4 of a mile. He died. They're still looking for the car. They're still looking for a white Chevy van. I bring this up because it's a tragedy for that individual. But today, my back and forths in the city of Oxnard, I saw people running red lights 6 times. I specifically counted 6 times. And it could be any one of us. And this was a pedestrian. So just a moment of silence for the poor guy and his family.
Please stand, right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is public comments for items not on the agenda. It appears that we have no comments, and I'd like to double check with the Assistant City Clerk.
Chair Perello, that's correct. We have no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. The City Clerk Department, subject to approval of the minutes, that the Public Works and Transportation Committee approve the minutes for October 10th, 2023, regular meeting as presented. Do we have any public comments on this? Madam Clerk, any public comments?
Chair Perello, we have no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you. Do we have any recommendations, changes, corrections, or additions?
I don't, sir. No.
Okay. No, okay. Do we have a motion?
So move.
I'll second. Roll call, please. Or vote, please vote.
Motion passed 3-0.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, under reports, D1, City Attorney's Department. Or subject, ordinance for the city council prohibiting single-use plastic foodware. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the city council introduce and adopt an ordinance entitled, quote, "The ordinance of the city of Oxnard, comma, California, city of Oxnard, California, amending Article 24 of Chapter 7 of the Oxnard City Code prohibiting the use and distribution of single-use plastic foodware," end quote. Again, due to the wisdom of the voters in Oxnard, or lack thereof, there will be no Measure M presentation. It was available in the video. And there would be, if there's any questions, Assistant City Attorney Michelle McCurran will be answering the questions, or, I beg your pardon, I see someone else up here, if they could introduce themselves and field the questions. And before you go, 1 second, do we have any public comments on this item?
Chair Perrello, there's no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, thank you. I want to say, I want to welcome the member of the public that did take the time to come to the meeting. Thank you for coming. Ray.
Step of it.
And please introduce yourself and
Michelle.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Chelsea Ballett, Deputy City Attorney for the City Attorney's
Yeah,
Office.
I was going to say,
Oh,
she's staff. I was going to say she's staff.
I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Do any of the members have questions on this?
I understand that this ordinance is a mandated ordinance, by the Governor Newsom. SB 54, is that correct?
Correct.
And also this is to prevent plastic packaging and to really produce more responsibility from Cal Recycle. But one of the things that was mentioned in the report is that ER really does not have the capacity yet, to accommodate a lot of the food plastic items. And consequently, this ordinance is going to be taking effect on January the 1st, 2024, and we won't be able to begin the processing until 2025. Is that correct? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So you're correct in that Environmental Resources does not have the capability to currently process the single-use foodware. The ordinance will take effect January 1st of next year. However, it will not be enforced until January 1st of 2025.
The enforcement is until 2025. Okay, all righty. So this, of course, some organizations are already doing it. I know that you go over to McDonald's and you have to ask for a plastic or a straw or so forth. So I can see the big sign there at McDonald's that are already complying ahead of time. And probably quite a few other stores too, Michael, and are complying now with this particular ordinance.
Actually, I believe there's a couple ordinances that we're talking about. So the first one is not providing that kind of foodware without being requested. This is a different ordinance.
Oh, okay.
And so maybe you want to explain that. We have Brian Yanes remotely available for any questions about operations, but I do want to clarify that our solid waste, we would typically do this as regular waste, meaning we can process it, it's just not recyclable. We don't process this as recyclable material, but we process it as waste.
Yeah, and my understanding is that certain institutions they're will be exempt from this particular ordinance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think, what is it, nursing homes, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's quite a few.
That is one of the exempt facilities, along with correctional institutions, and then licensed.
Correctional, right.
And then hospitals.
Hospitals and so forth, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. My question is this. In my opinion, this seems like it's a mandated thing from the state of California, but they haven't given us the funds to take care of this. Would that be, and maybe that's too political of a statement, but maybe the Public Works Director could address that?
That's a correct statement.
Okay, thank you. I feel good on that one. The issue about the different types of plastic foodware, there is some plastic foodware that's being advertised as biodegradable, and there's other types of plastic foodware that's not biodegradable. Is there any specific thing for where we take the material when we pick it up with our trucks to Del Norte that the people that are working in the sorting handle any of it, or it's just basically all treated the same, unfortunately?
That would be a great question for Mr. Yanez, who I believe is online.
Okay,
He's on.
Yeah, I can't get my camera on, so excuse me. Brian Yan is Assistant Public Works Director. That is a great question. Right now, we are handling hard plastics. We're not able to sort them. We don't have the equipment to sort them. So they are being disposed at the landfill. So they'll be in the trash. We take out the recyclables, green waste, obviously, and whatever is left, we're taking to the landfill. And these hard plastics right now are going to the landfill. I do have Robert Serrato, our recycling manager, who has much more in depth on our hard plastic and our processing. Robert, if I missed something, can you please chime in?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, right now, all that plastic is just being taken to the landfill. There's two problems. One, there's just no market for that plastic. So even if we were able to sort it, we wouldn't be able to sell it to anyone. That's what we do with the types of plastic that we are able to recycle. We sort them out, we bale them, and then we sell them to the highest bidder. They're valuable materials that people can use, but all of this plastic that's used for foodware, nobody wants to buy it. There's no market, and that's one of the reasons we're not collecting it. The other, like you said, is just it's so difficult to sort. It's so small. We have workers sorting by hand, pulling material out. It would be impossible to sort every fork and spoon that came down the line. There's also different types of plastic, so we wouldn't know what type of plastic each piece of foodware is, so we wouldn't be able to bill it as efficiently as we are with larger items. And then part of the reason that it's just not valuable, sometimes it's made from different materials, so in order to recycle it, you'd actually have to break it down into the different types of material that it is. It's just not practical. It'd be way too expensive. And someone asked about the biodegradable plastic or the compostable plastic. That's actually not biodegradable. If left alone in nature, it would take as long as regular plastic to degrade. And there are currently no facilities in our area that would accept it. So again, we have no market for that type of plastic.
thank the both of you very much for the information you've shared, and I greatly appreciate explaining that the biodegradable utensils is not exactly as advertised. Thank you very much. Hopefully one day everything can be used in something, whether mixed in asphalt or something like that, but there comes a time on diminishing returns. And also serving on the Ventura Regional Sanitation District, where they oversee the landfill at Tolan Landfill, there have been discussions with one of their customer, Harrison Industries, excuse me, that some of the material that is to be recycled, they can't find a market for it, so they end up taking it to the landfill. So we're not alone in that. If there's no market for it, you end up having to store it or buy land or rent land to store it, and it's not increasing in value. It becomes a detriment because the stuff is also combustible, and somebody sets it on fire, we got a big problem. So thank you, all three of you. Thank you very much, Appellate.
Thank you.
And Michael, any further question?
No, I was it at one time, maybe Brian and Robert, that they were thinking of if there was enough of that material to grind it up and it can be used to augment other materials. Is that is that correct?
Mayor Brian Yanas, Assistant Public Works Director. I'm unaware of that process. Robert, do you have any information regarding to the mayor's question?
Just grinding it up.
Yeah, it's Robert again. So there might have been a market for it prior to 2018. That's when China
The Chinese,
instituted their national sword policy. They stopped accepting a lot of recyclable material, especially plastic, and that just decimated the market, and it just lowered the price so much that people stopped doing that type of stuff, like grinding it up as pellets for recycling.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Do you need a motion on this end?
Do we have a recommendation?
A motion to approve?
Second?
And Madam Clerk, again, there's no comments?
Chair Perrello, correct, there's no comments.
Thank you. Please vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's all involved with getting the information.
Motion passed 3-0.
Next item on the agenda.
It's Mike.
I'm sorry. Next item on the agenda, Public Works Transportation Committee, the purchase order for Rush Truck Centers for a vacuum truck for the wastewater division. The recommendation is the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend the City Council approve and authorize to the city manager to execute a purchase order with Rush Truck Centers in the amount of $471,762.84 for the purchase of a vacuum truck for the wastewater division. Again, Measure M, due to Measure M, there's no visible presentation, but there was a recorded tape, and it's available for the public to see. It appears we'd have Mr. Jan Hauser on this one. There he is. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this one?
Chair Perrello, there's no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay. Committee members have questions. I'm gonna get some water.
Yeah, looking at listening to the presentation, this vacuum truck is going to be used for pumping out lift stations, and also respond to emergencies, bulk cleaning and underground utility cleaning and wastewater plant maintenance and sewage spills. I used to call it the elephant truck before. Is that, the old truck was the elephant, so that's going to be replaced.
Yes, that's correct. Good evening, Mayor, committee members. My name is Jan Hauser, wastewater division manager. Yes, I wasn't here when you called it that, but I believe you.
Yeah.
So yes, it is replacing an existing truck that's 20 years old, and that may be the one. We had another one that caught on fire, actually, about 5-6 years ago, out cleaning or responding to an emergency at a lift station.
And that truck is extremely important,
Oh, yeah.
because without it, I don't see how you can, clean the stations and the wet wells and so forth. So, we need it anyway. I think it's important. So that's all I have to share.
No questions.
I'd like to share the first experience I ever had with one of the vacuum trucks was I got a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning one time years ago from a gentleman, Martin Jones, telling me if I wanted to see the sewage coming out of the ground, come to Olds Road, and it was coming out of the ground. So I went down to Olds Road, and there was our vacuum truck doing its darndest to try to catch the sewage coming out of the ground, because it was coming out of the sewage was coming out of the manhole cover, which had been taken off, the equivalent of a chocolate fountain at a social event. And they were doing their darndest to prevent it from going into the drain that's in back of Oxnard College. And they did a good job. And the importance, as the mayor said, you never know when you're going to use it. And the significance, if that had gone to the ocean, it's tremendous fines for the city of Oxnard and tremendous health risk for the general public. So it's a much needed advice, a piece of equipment. Sometimes, I guess you get to the age that I'm at and you think, man, it's not that old, but things do wear out. And the other thing that comes into play, it costs a lot to maintain them and to fix them when they get to a certain age. And there is a time when it's a business decision that you got to change out. And it seems like that. But in looking through this, I just have a couple of questions, and they may be considered pretty ticky-tack, but I'm going to ask it this way. We're providing a truck chassis and the equipment that goes on this. It's going to be used on the Oxnard Plains in Oxnard with a Mediterranean-type climate. Is this truck going to be equipped with air conditioning? It doesn't look like it is, but I'm hoping not. I'm hoping we're not going for a luxury work truck with air conditioning. I did see the stereo, the radio, and the components for that, and I asked about the air conditioning because on page 59 of the staff report, page 29 of 55 of the staff report, it says concert class AM/FM radio weather band 3.5 auxiliary, $415. $415 is chump change in a piece of equipment this expensive. But just for the public, we are not going with a, leather seats, air conditioning, vibrating back, and all the fancy things that I'm sure every one of us would wish we had in our own vehicle. Is there any, I'm putting you on the spot and I apologize for that, Mr. Hauser, but is there any response to that?
So I'll go first, and then Jan can add to it. The staff report as written talks about the cooperative agreement that we're going to piggyback on. And if you notice that the discount is pretty significant. And typically what happens in these scenarios, they have pre-approved packages that we can't, if we start doing a la carte, it actually costs us more money. Just like when you go to buy a regular vehicle, if you ask for something special, that's not part of their standard build out. It costs more money because they're making it for you from a very specific request. And so typically we want to buy the prearranged package, even though that may come with an AM/FM radio, because it may cost us more actually to not ask for that.
Okay.
So that's kind of the general concept. I'll ask Mr. Hauser to answer any specific questions, but with respect to whether it has an air conditioner, I'm not sure.
And not to cut you off, I do understand when sometimes when you're purchasing something, a dealer may have something that's a very plush model, been on the lot for a long time, and he wants to unload it. So you get a special deal. And that's, I mean, I can understand that happening, but if we're going out to get equipment that's got these kinds of, if we worked in CME, I can understand it. Or, Thousand Oaks or something where it's hot. But the reason I ask, I just had a friend ask me this question. So I told him I'd try to get him an answer.
But I would also say we need to have a good work environment for our workers.
That's right.
Yeah.
And while it may be 75 degrees outside, they are working very hard. And to say they don't need an air conditioner, I would disagree with that. If they're working very hard and it's time to take a break, providing them a safe space to do that is important for us as well.
I'll accept that answer. I thank you.
And also, can I share, I know what you're saying, but I think having that air conditioning increases productivity too. And also the potential maybe that employee getting ill and so forth, so I think, I think you said, Michael, that's a standard, air conditioning is standard with when you buy that equipment already, it has those items, and to remove them probably costs more money to remove them than to keep them.
I don't know if it's standard with this package. My comment was, in general, we pick sort of off-the-shelf items to avoid those specialties, right? When you start picking a la carte, you start creating actually additional costs.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add?
Nope, I think Mr. Wolf did a fantastic job. Actually, I would add that some of this work is very labor intensive, and there are days where it is very hot outside. We're not always at the wastewater plant. Sometimes we're further north. And, it can be a pretty grueling job, and it can be very exhausting.
It's a very grueling, dirty, and very necessary and important job.
It absolutely is. And so after working outside, doing what this truck does for a couple hours, jumping in to cool down is a good thing.
Okay.
The other thing I will add is that recognize the medium we're working in here. We're working in sewage, so they may be wearing Tyvek suits, we may be wearing extra PPE. So there's a lot of things that go on to working in sanitation. So.
Excellent points. Thank you for bringing them up. Councilmember Valenzuela.
Yeah, as someone who works right next to the ocean and get the ocean breeze, like it could still be 80, 90 degrees out there sometimes, and then doing the manual intensive labor, air conditioning is a necessity for our workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Madam Clerk, we have any public comments?
Chair Perrello, there's no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
If there's no other questions by committee, do we have a recommendation?
I move the recommendation.
I'll second it. Please vote.
Motion passed 3-0.
Thank you very
For your
much.
support, committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to the staff and everything that's working on this piece of equipment and this stuff.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, D3. Thank you. We do have a public comment on this one. D3, subject agreement 32400-240 with Mariposa Landscape Incorporated for landscape maintenance services for 37 landscape maintenance districts and 1 maintenance assessment district within the city of Oxnard. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. With the recommendation, with the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommended the City Council, thank you, John. Recommended the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement for up to 5 years with Mariposa Landscape Incorporated for landscape maintenance services within the city's 37 landscape maintenance districts and 1 maintenance assessment district in the amount not to exceed $9 million. $9 million. That includes all possible extensions for the maximum 5-year term ending December 31st, 2028. Again, due to Measure M, there is no physical presentation tonight, but there was a video presentation. And if residents have questions on this matter, they can bring them to your attention. And with that, we do have a public comment. Mr. Ray Blattell, please. Thank you for the word.
Thank you. Committee Chair, committee members, I just got a few questions. The first one is, who decides what is the service level for any district, what they receive? Is it established at the time that the district is formed? And if the citizens desire to change it, how do you do that? How would you do that? Also, I would like to know what was the previous contract rate for Garcia Landscaping for LMD number 28? And what is the new contract rate for Mariposa for LMD 28? The monthly meetings that you hold with the contractor to evaluate performance, are these documented? And if not, why aren't they documented? And if they are documented, how does one get a copy of the documentation? Garcia's bid was 19.5 million and Mariposa was 4.2 million. That's quite a difference. You think Garcia was on the job 4 to 5 years, and they would should have a pretty good idea what's needed to be done and the cost materials, escalation and things like that. I'd like to mention that I had recently looking for a better deal with my homeowners and automobile policies, and I had about 5 different agencies, and one of them was very, very inexpensive. And I go, wow, why is this so inexpensive? And after doing some research, I determined that's maybe not the best thing to do. And I'm just wondering if this is one of those instances where, it's just too much, too little. Also, regarding the pre-recorded briefing, the spend plan for 37 LMDs and 1 MAD for FY 2023 and 24 was stated as $616,189. But in the 2023-2024 Consolidated Engineering Report on page 3, the FY 2023-24 levy amount for 37 LMDs is stated as $683,725.51. Why is this difference? And also, on the same document, on table 6.1, the total expenses are $3,958,857, and maintenance cost alone is $2,439,123. And I assume this is all Mariposa. Now, why are these different numbers? This confuses me. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Okay, one second. We've had some straight up, took the time to come to the meeting and ask the questions, and I appreciate that, Mr. Blatel. On specifically when he was addressing questions off certain charts or certain tables, are those documents in the item that we're discussing tonight? I don't think they are. They're from past documents. And the reason I'm asking that, if they are, Madam City Attorney, would this be an item to either forward with no decision to the council, or would this be an item to bring back to the Public Works Committee with that information to address that question? I don't want to blow off the public question.
We can move it forward without the engineer's report. That's not something that's required for this contract.
Chair Pirelli, so
Yeah, please.
part of his question relates to the differences between what's in these documents tonight and what was in a document that the council approved many months ago.
Correct.
Those documents are not part of tonight's agenda. Now, we can answer the question if the chair wants us to answer the question, but those documents are not present because they're not germane to the conversation tonight.
Can we answer the question tonight, or do we need to go back to get those documents?
The answer to the question is relatively straightforward. The question that he's talking about is the contract value that we're doing tonight is not everything that's levied. That's why there's a difference. We levy staff time, we levy overhead costs, we levy tree trimming, we levy lots of other things. Tonight's contract is only for landscape maintenance. So there is a difference between those two numbers. It's because there's other things that we do in those districts.
Okay. I hope that helps, Mr. Battelle. I hope. Before, I'd like to ask the first questions. Mr. Battelle asked some pretty specific questions. Who decides a service level in an area? Who would answer that?
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Eric Story. I am your Special Districts Manager. So in deciding a service level within any individual district, whether it be a CFD, an LMD, the waterways districts, or our maintenance assessment district, it's a combination of factors. First is available funding. Does the district have the funding available for the service level that they're requesting? If the answer is yes, and the district can fund all other required expenses for the year, then the discussion can happen regarding increasing service levels. In the alternative, if the district wants a higher service level but cannot afford it, then again, another discussion between special district staff and the community will happen. There are other opportunities and processes that we can go through in order to work with the community to ensure that they get the service level that they want and they can afford. So to answer that, Chair, it's a combination of staff plus available funding from the districts.
And I think that last part answers the second part of his question. How can changes be made?
I apologize for interrupting. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then the rest of the questions, I believe, deals with the previous contract and the items that were done previously with different types of work, different combinations of work versus this one simply landscaping.
Well, there were some more questions that we could
There was
probably
the previous contract, number 28, specifically District 28, Garcia versus Mariposa, the monthly meeting. I'll get to that one, but on the specifics of District 28, Garcia and Mariposa, there were two different types of job. One was inclusive tree trimming and And landscaping, or, no, thank you for.
That's different.
Thank you,
So-
correct me, please.
Yeah, so one of his middle questions was, what was the rate that LMD 28 was paying under the old contract versus what is the rate potentially being paid under this contract? That's one of his questions, which is different than his last couple of questions, which were about why is the levy amount in the engineer's report different than the contract value that's being proposed tonight? So I think Mr. Story can probably answer some general questions about the monthly meetings and the documentation. Also can probably answer the difference between why the existing incumbent bid higher than the current low bidder, and probably does discuss a little bit about the contract rates for LMD 28, I'm assuming. Mr. Story can answer those questions now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Chair, members of the committee. So one of the questions was the previous rates versus the new rates for services provided. I think it's important to understand that the last agreement with Garcia's was based on the service level. So what that means is if LMD, whatever number, wanted a level of service, they would pay for everything with an A level of service, whether or not they needed that service provided or not. With the new agreements, we still have that opportunity, but it's more of an a la carte process by which we can pick and choose pieces within different service levels. So we won't be able to do a direct comparison between those two questions that Mr. Botel asked, the previous rates and the new rates, but staff can try to do an analysis after we get through a year of the agreement. Now, the other question that the resident asked was regarding contractor meetings. In the agreement, it does stipulate specific meetings, which we do currently with our contractors. It is a meeting to discuss how operations are going, to address concerns in performance, and really contractor management. These are not, I believe the follow-up question to that was whether or not these are documented. These individual meetings are not, but landscape maintenance inspections of contracted work is by our staff. And I believe that was all the questions from the resident.
I believe it was. Can I ask Public Works, if we do have the meetings and they're not documented, can we give an explanation of why we would not document them in the future to have in a file so that if something goes haywire, we got a lot more evidence if we need to make a change?
So contractually, when we want to make a change, that'll be documented. Those meetings aren't necessarily for documenting changes. Now, if there is a reason to document a change, that will be written down as a change order or a document amendment. That's when we really want to make those, put those in writing. The conversations that are occurring, there's no need for us to document those conversations. What Mr. Story is saying is that when we go out and do an inspection, and if they fail to do something, that's when we also document.
Okay. On these monthly meetings, does that take into account, like if residents are complaining about certain things and they've called, whether Mr. Story or Mr. Howlett or 311, do they address those things with the contractor?
Chair, it depends on what the issue is. Before you is the landscape maintenance agreements, which do not cover all aspects of what special districts does. Now, if the resident and the issue were involving this specific agreement, then yes, we could document, we could take corrective action, whether it be through staff efforts or through contract services.
Okay, okay. Do my other.
Yeah, the question I have is, this is a 5-year agreement for the $5 million, but can you explain the A to F levels?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Merritt. So within the document, there is a service level document version 5, which indicates 5 different service levels. A being the highest service level, getting the most services at a more frequent basis. It's essentially a weekly service for the core items. B level services bi-weekly, and it includes a little less than A, right? And then C all the way down to F, which is a quarterly service, which is essentially mowing and cleanup of grass.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because people need to understand that, that it depends, if you hire a gardener, you're going to mow the lawn once a week or every 2 weeks and so forth. And basically, that's what A to F levels are.
Yes.
And also, in your, in the video says, you know, that Mariposa met all the requests for bids, met all the city requirements and that were enumerated, so so he actually met all city standards that we asked for.
Yes.
Correct?
Purchasing and staff reviewed, and then I'll let city attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, when this was put out to bid, it was put out to bid on the award that would, excuse me, it was going to be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, and that was Mariposa. So it wasn't on a best value, and we can't change things. Once we put out a bid for low bid, that's what we have to stick to.
And that's important to understand, so that's why I think, thank you for that. Mr. Michael?
Yeah, Chair Perrella, can I ask Mr. Story to answer one more question? Because Mr. Littell asked a very interesting question that I think we didn't answer yet. It's one that I actually asked staff as well, which has to do with why the incumbent bid so much higher than other bidders. And Mr. Story has the information.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. So as noted in the staff report, the city did send out a request for clarification because after receiving bids, there was a wide range of bids that we received. So in sending out the request for clarification, the city provided all bidders the opportunity to ask questions. So the core of the question is, why is our current contractors' prices so much different than what they are currently in terms of the bid? At the core of it, I talked to them and they said they did not follow the instructions and they did not ask questions.
Right.
They did not follow the instructions. They did not follow the instructions and didn't ask questions. Is that the?
Yes, Chair.
That'll get you in trouble every time. Okay.
No, need a motion this item?
Okay, I would just like to share this. I'm in support of this. I would like to share this. There's a neighborhood in the Channel Islands neighborhood, and it's called Harbor Island. They have agreed to come up with money out of their basically their own personal bank account of the neighborhood to increase the quality of services. Another neighborhood, South Bank, I happen to live in the South Bank neighborhood, took our city staff to task because they were very unhappy with what happened. I was very embarrassed to be a member of that neighborhood the night that it happened because they didn't seem to understand that you can only stretch a nickel so far and you can't make people work for free. Slavery's been outlawed in this country, and they expected a lot more than they were entitled to. They didn't understand that. That night, the city manager was there, Public Works was there. I think maybe Mr. Howlett was there, I'm not sure. He's nodding his head. But there were a lot of people there trying to give them answers. They were treated very rudely, in my opinion. And since then, I understand that some of the members have met with the staff. But a suggestion that was made that night is because that particular neighborhood is composed of several different combinations of districts, each having their own different prices. If they work together and potentially they want something better, everybody could agree that they want a little less here, a little more there, share the costs, and they would get a better service. But that is not something that I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the city can impose on them. They have to decide on their own. And I'm looking for some direction. Am I correct or wrong or way out in left field?
So our engineer's report defines the different districts, and to amend that, we'd have to amend the engineer's report. So collectively, we should not be engaging those conversations. They should be individual to the districts based on the engineer's report.
Okay. Okay, thank you. With that, do we have a recommendation? Oh, and one more. I live in District 13. The mayor lives in the city attorney has already got District 3?
Three, that's what, yeah.
And we are advised that we do not have a conflict on this matter.
Right.
Is that correct, Madam City Attorney?
That's correct. Pursuant to Government Code 1091.5A3, you and Mayor Zaragoza are deemed to not be interested in the Mariposa contract because you're recipients of public services that are generally provided by the City Council on the same terms and conditions as if you were not members of City Council. So you were able to fully participate in this item.
Thank you very much for that
Thank you for that.
clarification.
Thank you. Make a motion to approve.
Excuse me, Chair Perrello.
Yes, thank you.
There is no additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk.
Second?
Please vote.
Motion passed 3-0.
Thanks to all involved. Thank you, Mr. Story, Mr. Wolf, and Mr. Howlett. Thank you. And City Attorney, thank you very much. The next item, D4, agreement number 324000238 with Mariposa Landscape Incorporated for landscape maintenance services with Community Facilities District Number 2. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommends the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with Mariposa Landscape Incorporated for landscape maintenance services within Community Facilities District Number 2 in the amount not to exceed $1,564,500 for a maximum 5-year term of the agreement with an initial term of 12 months ending December 31st, 2024, after which the agreement may be extended for 4 additional 1-year terms with a fully extended final term ending December 31st, 2028. Again, due to Measure M, there is no presentation. There is a video presentation the public could have seen on the internet, on the city's site, several days in advance of this meeting. And do we have any public comments on this, Madam Clerk?
Chair Perrello, there's no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
And again, we have Mr. Story here. Do committee members have any questions on item 4?
No questions.
Well, this is a CFD compared to LMD, right? Which I think there's a difference. Is that correct? Just for public?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee, Eric Story, your Special Districts Manager. Yes, Mr. Mayor, this agreement is for a community facilities district, a CFD, which is different from the last agenda item,
LMD, yes.
which was for the LMDs. And they are governed by different laws and codes and statutes, as well as have different abilities to fund services.
And my understanding, this is a level A, right?
Traditionally, yes. Westport CFD number 2 has been an A level of service by which they get services weekly.
And that's why I mentioned the A to F, which is, I think, is important that the public understand that, and also the CFDs and LMDs and so forth. So this is a level A, and again, let me see, what did I have here? This is a 5-year agreement also.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The only statement I'd like, the level A, the top service, these residents have agreed to pay the costs that go with getting the top service. They want top shelf liquor, they're gonna pay for top shelf liquor, basically?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Quickly, can you just give a thumbnail difference between a CFD and an LMD?
The
Real basic thing, because people going, what have I got, what is this, why not this?
It's a good point.
Yes, the LMDs were formed under the 72 Act. The CFDs were formed under the 82 Act, Melrose Act. And the LMDs, by and large, have specific authorized services and improvements. So for example, LMD 3, trees, shrubs, and ground cover. That's what it's designed to fund and improve. The CFDs have more varied services. So it could be parks, recreation facilities, libraries, landscaping, of course, waterway improvements, things like that. So the CFDs have a larger breadth of potential authorized services and improvements, but I'll let Mr. Wolf expand on this.
What I would add to that is that you can have LMDs that have some extensive improvements. The governances are different. How you vote for them, what's special versus general benefit, whether or not you have to apply a general benefit contribution, there are governance differences between the two. The LMDs have a requirement that you can't assess for the general benefit. That has to come from a different source. The CFDs do not have such a provision in the Melrose Act. So there's different governances for them. And you use them for different purposes, depending on the types of improvements, the longevity of the improvements, things like that. So there are some differences, but mostly in the way they're governed.
And if I can ask a slight follow-up on that, the initial purchasers of property in these districts are made aware that these fees are going with that. It's supposed to be fully disclosed for the initial purchaser of the property.
So even taking one step back from that, there's actually a ballot process that takes place to the property owners. Normally that's for the developers, but there's a ballot process that takes place. So after that, after the formation of a CFD or an LMD, then if that subdivision is then subdivided and sold, then there's a disclosure requirement as part of the escrow documents that the purchaser has to sign, acknowledging that they are in a special assessment district.
Okay, thank you. And for the public, I can recall being in a Rio School District Board meeting where this item, the final vote to impose these fees on the people that were going to be in River Park, that would eventually, when it was developed, and it was, I believe, no more than 4 individuals that had the final say if those fees would be put on those homeowners. And they voted to support it. It was somehow the school was involved. And I remember that a lot of people have been mad, how did that happen? But it was originally accepted by the people that had the property, that wanted the development. They needed to impose these fees before the development would go forward through the city of Oxnard. Madam Clerk, has anybody taken the time to call in?
Chair Perello, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you. Do we have any final questions? If not, a recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, please vote.
Motion passed 3-0.
Next item, D5, Agreement 324-00239 for SGD Enterprises doing business as Four Seasons Landscaping for landscaping maintenance services for Community Facilities District Number 5. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement with SGD Enterprises doing business as Four Seasons Landscaping for landscaping maintenance services with Community Facilities District Number 5 in the amount not to exceed $6,545,000 for the maximum 5-year and 2-month term of the agreement, with the initial agreement term of 14 months ending December 31st, 2024, after which the agreement may be extended for an additional 1 year after which the agreement may be extended for 4 additional 1-year terms with a fully extended final term ending December 31st, 2028. Again, Measure M, there is no presentation, but it's available on video if so interested.
No speakers.
We have no public comments on this, Madam Clerk.
Chair Perello, we have no public comments virtually or in person for this item.
And we have Mr. Story again, and thank you very much. Do we have any comments?
The question I have, this is LMD within a CFD?
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Eric Story, your Special Districts Manager. The item before you is for River Park CFD number 5 proper. The last item that we discussed was for the sports fields located within the CFD.
Within the CFD.
But within the school district sites, which the CFD is responsible for.
The LMD.
For the CFD, for funding those services of ball field maintenance. The agenda item before you now is for CFD proper, so River Park, for the maintenance and landscape services.
Okay, within the CFD.
Within the CFD, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I was a little confused with that, but that's a good explanation then. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do they have any responsibility, is any responsibility for this for maintaining where the gravel pits were and now the water is basically called the lakes? No? We don't go inside this?
No, Chair, not to our knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's the only question I had.
You need a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Please vote.
Motion passed 3-0.
Okay.
The last item on the agenda this evening, agreement, it's number D6, agreement 324-00232 with Garcia Landscape Maintenance Incorporated for landscape maintenance services for the River Park ball fields within the Community Facilities District number 15. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with Garcia Landscape Maintenance Incorporated for landscape maintenance services for the River Park ball fields within Community Facilities District number 5 in the amount not to exceed $1,725,000 for the entire 5-year and 2-month term of the agreement ending December 31st, 2028. Again, Measure M. Sorry, no.
Let me take up.
No presentation. Madam Clerk, do you have any comments on this?
Chair Perrello, there's no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Chair, this is almost similar to the last one.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee, Eric Story, your Special Districts Manager. Mr. Mayor, let me correct a statement that I previously made. The agenda item now before you currently
Is what you said.
for the ball fields within CFD 5. The last agenda item was for CFD 5 River Park proper. The one prior to that was for CFD number 2 Westport. I apologize for the...
So the explanation you had before for 5 is for 6.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is now for the ball fields.
Those LMDs and CFDs, you know, but and I think, you know, they all met, you know, Garcia's did, you know, this is $1.7 million, right, for 5 years. That ends in December 31, 2028.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
I know that these fields are maintained very well. They're used quite extensively. But they are also fields that are attached to the Rio School District schools. One Rio Vista Middle School and the other Del Mar Elementary School ball fields. Is the Rio School District helping with these costs?
Mr. Chair, the ball fields are an authorized service and improvement of River Park CFD, and there is an existing joint use agreement between the city and the school district. The school district does not fund any of this expense.
Are the ball fields part of the school district's property?
They are, yes.
Okay, thank you. I know that a lot of people ask questions on that. Living in River Park, if I lived there, I'd ask those questions also, but I appreciate that. I see Mr. Howlett getting up. If you, anything to add, we have an opportunity here.
Mr. Chair, if I can clarify as well, the reason why this contract is coming to you separate is because of a request from the residents for that exact reason, that residents wanted more transparency about, they understand that their assessments also go to maintain the sports fields, but instead of having it combined like it was previously, they wanted to see the sports fields separate from the general maintenance of the landscapes in the CFD 5 community. So they're both being paid from the same assessment for River Park, but they're watching the sports fields separately. And they're also, because they're sports fields, they're maintained at a different level of service as well.
Okay.
they're A-level. I'm sorry, they're A-level.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry, A-level?
For the sports fields, yes, they're, but it's not on the same scale that you see for the other districts.
My
It's just
apologies,
sports
I
No
fields.
problem, no problem.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much for the information, and the next time I'm at a River Park Neighborhood Council meeting that comes up, I'll be able to return them to this item. Thank you. I mean it. Thank you very much from Public Works for bringing that up and explaining it. Any other questions?
Motion to approve?
And
Second.
Clerk, there's no comments, Madam Clerk?
Chair Perrello, no comments.
Okay.
First, second, but,
I'll make a motion to approve. Oh, do you already have a second?
no,
Somebody,
go ahead.
you made the motion? Okay, Mr. Zaragoza, Mayor Zaragoza made the motion. Councilmember Valenzuela seconded it. Please vote.
Motion passed 3-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all involved. Thank you for the information. Next item on the agenda, are there any suggestions for future items on this, on the agenda for the Public Works Committee?
No, I don't.
I have none. With that, this meeting is adjourned.